Today is April 3rd, 2012. This is the 39th CALLERLAB Convention. We are in Nashville. This session is True and Technical Zeros. I am the moderator, Clark Baker, and our panelist is Tim Marriner. And we are starting a little late, and we've done our introductions. Here we go. I was first exposed to zeros and equivalents in the late 1970s. If we go back in history, our milestone award information on Lloyd Littman, can you turn me down? I feel really loud and this is really far away. Our information on Lloyd Littman indicates that we credit him with such commonly used terms as zero movements, equivalents, setups, get-outs, 1P, 2P route lines, and box 1-4 couple formations, etc. So that was the oldest reference I could find as zeros. And I wish I could get a copy of that book, by the way. My first CALLERLAB convention was in the 1980s when Bill Davis's Formations Committee first defined these terms for our organization. I remember sitting in on those discussions. Ever since 1975, I've worked on computer programs that create and or dance, square dance choreography. By 1983, these computer programs went through their database of calls, mainstream through challenge, and identified calls and call sequences that were true or technical zeros. Each caller understands how to move their dancers around and resolve the square differently. Initially, we're taught somebody's system, and then often a second or a third. As we grow and do more calling, we begin to merge these systems. We talk with other callers, make other discoveries. Some of us are particularly interested in the choreographic and resolving aspect of calling, including the math behind how it all works. And I'm one of those people. Early on, I learned about Don Beck's mental image system. He had a talk here at convention and did one last year too, I believe. Even though I don't use it, by understanding it, I also have a better understanding of how calls work, how to resolve the square. In the same way, I don't actively use true or technical zeros in my calling. But my study and understanding of them does help me be a better caller. So that's kind of my motivation of why it might be interesting to learn this junk. I will start by laying the groundwork and making sure that you understand all the terminology we'll be using. Tim's going to offer some practical applications, especially for the modular callers. So there's some terminology. So why do we need terminology at all? And if there's common areas in our discussion that come up time and time again, it helps to have a word or a short phrase that tells you what we're talking about. And instead of saying, I had the dancers in that place you get to after you do, like a head square through 4, we just call that a zero box these days. So it's a lot quicker. But if you're a newer caller and don't know what zero box is, and you're sitting in a conversation like this, and the caller's like, well, we're in a zero box, and we do swing through, boys run, what do you got? Is that a corner line or what? And you're thinking, you're still back on zero box. That was that thing that's the same as head square through 4. So new terminology takes a while to absorb. And terminology that isn't used a lot, you almost wonder, is it worth learning? So, for example, head step to a wave. That's a formation. Do we have a name for that formation? No. We don't get there very often, so we don't really care about it that much. And if we needed to talk about it, I go, we did head step to a wave. Now from there, I want to talk about, and then there we've got it. So here's some terminology I'm hoping which is useful to you because we do use it a lot. The first thing we have to do is review phaser. I want to back up for one step and say that Dottie Welch's committee, the Choreographic Applications Committee, is working on a fabulous document which is documenting all the different systems of site calling and has quite a bit about modules in it and maybe a little bit about crams. Little crams, a lot of site. It's basically her goal was to document every site calling system anyone knew about. That is wonderful. I wish I had that back in 1975. It starts with a chapter or two laying down the groundwork and the foundation terms, and I stole some of the stuff in this talk from that because she presents it in a great way. This is mostly reviewed, needs one more go around, and then CALLERLAB will, publish it and make it available. It's been a long time in coming. So let's talk about FASR. We hear about FASR all the time. It consists of four things. The F is formation, and the A is arrangement. The S is the sequence of the dancers, and the R is the relationship they have. Starting with formation, it's the pattern formed by the footprints of the dancers. It includes their facing direction. If we just talk about the spots on the floor, we don't speak of that very often, but we could call it the geometry. So, are you in a 2x4 geometry or a 1x8 or diamonds? And then there's the position. You can say you've got centers and ends. I'm a center dancer. I'm an end dancer. I'm a this or that. But mostly today we care about formation. Every one of the zeros we're going to talk about, if I just said, hey, did you know that all 8 circulates a 0? Really, that's not enough information. It's all 8 circulate done from a formation. So all 8 circulate from ocean waves is a 0. Well, actually, it's a technical 0, and I have to say more. Or 8 chain 4 is a true 0. 8 chain 4 from an 8 chain through formation is a 0. Where is 8 chain 4 not a 0? Michael? This isn't going to be a Michael every time, is it? Go ahead. Right-hand ocean waves. If I'm in right-hand ocean waves and call 8 chain 4, you don't end up in right-hand ocean waves. It's not a true 0. Not that we've defined that yet, but we will in just a second. So you always need a formation that you're talking about. But once you get going real fast on this subject, we knew that 8 chain 4 is done from 8 chain through formation, so we don't have to be pedantic and say it all the time. But to be pedantic, you would have to say that. Arrangement. Arrangement is where the men and the women are in the 8 spots. And we're only talking about symmetric choreography today. And in symmetric choreography, we all know there are how many? 6. 6 arrangements of the men and the women. Is that okay? And we see that so often we gave them numbers. And this is where Bill Davis's committee might have overreached a little bit. Because we use so few of them so infrequent, or we use so many of them so infrequently, the fact that we gave them numbers and all that only matters to the poor color coaches taking the exams. But here's the stuff you should know. The number 0, in the numbers, we didn't call them 1 through 5 or 2 through 6 or 1 through 6. We called them 0 through 4, 0 and a half, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. 0 is what we think of as normal sex arrangement. So heads pair off, or heads lead right. That's a number 0, 8 chain through formation. The number 0 is the arrangement.
In written terms, it's a little z.
Oh, and there's a whole big, we've messed up, and it's only written in a few places, the big Z 0 and the little z 0 and all that. But anyhow, heads square through 4 step to an ocean wave. That's a number 0 right-hand ocean waves. Swing through. Now we're in 1/2 right-hand ocean waves, the half sashayed version. And almost everything we talk about today will either be 0 or a half. In other words, normal or half sashayed, just like you think it means. Okay, we did arrangement. Oh, it said right here 6 possible. You could have read that.
Well, you're reading well.
Sequence state. That's the order of the dancers as we go around the square. So let's say we look at all the men in the square. We've done a head square through 4, and you look at the men as you go around the square in promenade direction. As you look at their numbers, is it going 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4? If it's going 1, 2, 3, 4 in order, we say the men are in sequence. We can look at the women, same issue. The women can be in sequence. So if the men can be in sequence or out of sequence, the women can be in sequence or out of sequence. How many different ones of those do we have? 4. And you'll see that today with technical zeros, we're going to pair those up. And we're going to say the men and the women having the same sequence as each other. That's going to be important to us. We're going to call that the same. Or the men and the women having opposite sequence from each other, 1 in, 1 out, or vice versa. That's going to be opposite. That's what's going to be key to us a little later. Finally, there's relationship. And we had a session earlier on, keeping your marriage working, and I guess that's, we should have gone to that.
Is that the relationship?
That's the relationship,
about?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Well, we don't really care about relationship much today, and it's actually a rare thing in discussing calling and resolving about relationship. It seems to always be FASR, but we hardly ever get down to how the R actually works for some other reasons.
Now, in the FASR program, if we're modular calling, do we need this? No, we really don't. If we're modules, we've already got it written out. It's kind of a memorized routine. We plug them together. If we're site calling, what are the things that we use first? F and A the most, and only when we go to the resolution method do we worry about the S and the R, right? Only when we resolve do we start worrying about the S, the sequence, and relationships.
So any questions so far? Everyone's up to speed on this stuff, or you just had your refresher, right? Cool. So now we want to talk about zeros. A zero is a nothing. You did it and it didn't hurt anything. You can, if I know, let me give you a sequence. Head square through 4, swing through, boys run, Ferris wheel. Anyone know how to get home? Centers pass through. Oh, just slide through your home, or centers pass through Alaman left. I didn't really do much. Let's say we have that as a sequence, but we want to add a 0. I could do head square through 4, 8 chain through. And then I could keep going. Swing through, boys run, Ferris wheel, pass through Alaman left. Because the 8 chain through left you right where you were, and it didn't mess up the square at all. So the first thing we want to talk about, so the idea of a 0 is it doesn't do anything. I can put it in or leave it out. And my view is if we had written sequences, maybe I just think of this because I'm a written sequence kind of guy, but if we wrote a sequence of calls down on our non-existent whiteboard and said we start from a squared set, we do this, and it's Alaman left. When I speak of these zeros, I'm going to somewhere on that sequence insert some kind of 0, and my claim will be the sequence still works. It still resolves. That's kind of what's going on here. Cool? Butch, hold on. Let me try this again. Butch.
Tell us where you're from.
Butch Adams from the Washington, D.C. area. You said that it's a 0, so it doesn't do anything, so we really don't care about it. But when you call that, you flipped your square, so you have done something.
8 chain through, all 8 hands.
I thought he said 4.
Nope.
Oh,
we hadn't got there yet.
I stand corrected. I thought you said 8 chain 4.
Okay, not a problem. So the first thing we did is we talk about geographic zeros. And it's a series of I wanted some definitions that when we hit stuff later, you can go back to the sheet and just kind of look at it and go, okay, that's this one. A geographic zero is one or more calls. Most of the calls I'm going to deal with today, I like the single calls that are a 0 just because it's concise and we can talk about it. When we speak of modules, you're going to think of modules as a series of calls that do these effects. But mostly it's going to be a single call. So it's a series of one or more calls, returns the dancers to the same footprints. With respect to FASR, all we care about is the F. So a geographic 0 has to start in a specific F formation, and since it does nothing effectively, you're going to be right back there. So it'll end in the same F. So for example, from facing lines, I wrote a long one, I guess. Pass through, wheel and deal, double pass through. First couple go left, next couple go right. Is that something people have called before? More in the old days than today, I think. And you're right back where you started. And yet maybe the dancers feel like they've done something. And maybe that's the thing you do when you're teaching wheel and deal. Exactly. We already mentioned in an 8 chain through formation, 8 chain through. And let's say we had facing lines. Now you may be thinking boy, girl, number 0 facing lines. Let's say we had boy, girl facing lines. Pass through, wheel and deal, double pass through, first go left, next go right. Are we right back where we started? Didn't hurt anything, did it? Heads half sachet, sides half sachet, heads square through 4. 8 chain through. The courtesy turns are all not suitable for mainstream, but they're still right back where they started.
Okay for plus.
Okay for plus.
And above, right, beyond.
Squared set, sides face, grand square. It's a 0, a geographic 0.
But halfway through, It's still a zero,
Oh.
but it's a technical zero.
No.
Well, wait. Think about it. We'll go to this later. We'll go to, but at a halfway point of grand square, we'll come back to this and talk about technical zeros.
Who knew he was going to throw things at me like this and make me think at the same time I'm giving the talk? Okay. There's something that always comes up in these discussions, and that's that we often in our calling use sex or gender dependent calls, especially slide through or star through. And for example, let's say we have normal facing couples. I'm just talking about 4 dancers. Swing through, boys run, wheel and deal. Are they right back where they started? What if they were half sashayed? Swing through, boys run, they're running in the middle, wheel and deal, bad flow, and now they need a right and left through to get back home, or maybe they have a ladies chain or something. So you could think in your mind as a caller, swing through, boys run, wheel and deal, that's a nothing. And generally you're right, it's a geographic zero, but the phaser, the FASR, the F is facing couples, and the A, we don't have a term because all of phaser, all the rest of ASR deals with 8 dancer formations. So we have to notate that differently. We would say from normal facing couples, swing through, boys run, wheel and deal, that's a geographic zero. And most of the stuff we do today, we're going to be talking about 8 dancer calls and 8 dancer zeros. But when you're doing small modules, you can speak of smaller ones, usually 4 dancer ones, and there's tons of them that are good. Because if you think about the old chicken plucker, we do head square through 4 to set it up, and then we dance them around on this side, usually using 2 couple calling. And then we right and left through, dive through, pass through. They're on the other side. Our active people are. And then we mess them around over there, right and left through, dive through, pass through. They're right back to nothing. Element left, and they're happy. So that mess them around doing nothing, those are going to be geographic zeros, but they may be the sex-dependent kind. So keep that in mind.
Arrangement matters.
So in that case, arrangement matters and stuff. So I'm kind of done with geographic zeros for the moment. We can come back to it, and if anyone has any comment they need me to make or they're confused, we want to move on. Excellent. Let's talk about true zeros. This stuff is the simple stuff. This is not the brain burner part of the talk. True zeros are 1 or more calls that return the dancers to the same footprints, except the whole mess can be rotated with respect to where they started. If they were dancing on a giant turntable at the end of a true zero, I could spin the turntable enough and they'll be right back where they were as if it were a geographic zero. Does that make sense? And as Butch mentioned, 8-chain 4, be more specific, from an 8-chain through formation, 8-chain 4 is a true zero. You can put it in, you can leave it out. From ocean waves, and throughout this document, I've made I don't have the right word at the moment. I've taken a liberty, which I'm hoping we will head for in the new formations the definitions committee is working on. We do not have a formation in CALLERLAB called ocean waves. We have right-hand ocean waves in a pictogram. We have left-hand ocean waves in a pictogram. And when I say ocean waves, I want you guys to think, oh, it's right-hand waves or left-hand waves. That's just a shorthand for not having to list them both. And I've used that throughout this document, and you guys automatically use it throughout your discussions. But it's unsaid within our organization, and we need to have it written down. So from ocean waves, relay the Ducey is a true zero, and it rotates the square 180. You can think of it as the ends circulate 2 spots and the centers circulate 2 spots, and they meet up with the same person. Am I correct on that? Does that make sense? Everyone's happy?
Yes.
Okay. And that thing about the sex-dependent stuff, you can see down at the bottom of that page, like from facing lines, pass through, from number 0 facing lines, from normal facing lines, pass through, tag the line, face in, box the net, right and left through. That is a true zero. But we had to say from number 0 lines because box the net was a sex-dependent call. Curiously enough, from ocean waves, hinge centers trade and do that 3 times is a true zero. And that's a very unusual thing that mental image systems can't handle. But it does something really odd. But anyhow, it happens to be a true zero. Some true zeros rotate the square 90 degrees, some 180, some 270. If it rotated it not at all, it's a true zero, but we know it's a geographic zero. Moving on. Anybody want to say anything? Are you all happy so far?
May I add a couple of comments on that? True zero, a couple of things to consider on true zeros. Phasor does not change. Rolls of heads and sides does not change. That's important to note. Ends remain ends, and centers remain centers in a lot of those. So just kind of those are things that you want to really analyze when you're talking about true zeros. Click.
The next term would be fractional zeros. And I didn't spend a lot of time in the handout on this. This handout, by the way, is up on my website, as are all my handouts from ColorLab talks. And the mistakes that I found in this, there's minor typos and there's one major mistake that I'll try to remember to mention when I hit it, are all fixed in the online version. Fractional zeros they are a series of one or more calls that must be called 2 or more times in order to return the dancers to the same phasor. The F matters, and when the calls are repeated the necessary number of times, the phasor will remain unchanged. But like a true zero, the square may be rotated. So when I said quarter through or hinge centers trade 3 times is a true zero, we would say that hinge centers trade is a 1/3 zero because you do it 3 times and then it's a nothing. It's zeroed out. And let's see what I listed here.
Pass from zero lines, pass through wheel and deal, double pass through, put centers in, cast off 3/4. But you have to do that 3 times.
That's a 1/3 zero.
1/3 zero.
And in the old days, and in all the callers note services, or many callers note services have been scanned and are available on the Square Dance Foundation New England's website. And back in the old days, especially the Bill Peters and Bill Davis note services are filthy with this stuff. They were really into this stuff. They had quizzes, can you find a 1/12 zero?
A 1/12?
Yeah. So I cut and pasted a little bit of that to Guy just to give him something to think about. Lucky Guy, yeah. A half zero, what's a half zero? Can anyone make up one or whatever? Do you know one? Anyone? I don't know.
Yeah, no.
Oh, someone said.
I happen to think like a right and left through, pass through, trade by.
Oh, there you go. Yep.
You do it twice, right and left through, pass through, trade by, and you bring them back. But
someone said all 8 circulate because you do all 8 circulate twice, and clearly, you've done really the doozy.
Michael, you want to say
Michael,
one? So we can
I'm going to repeat it. Zoom. Oh, yeah.
Excellent.
Zoom 1, Zoom again. Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay. 4 ladies chain, because you do another 4 ladies chain. So let's say we wanted, we've seen too many 1/3 zeros to make it interesting. A 1/4 zero, something you have to do 4 times to get back to where you started. I heard star through from facing couples. Star through, star through, star through, star through.
Pass through, bend the line. Pass through, bend the line. Pass through, bend the line. Pass through, bend the line.
Okay. One that I like for 1/3 zero is triangle circulate. Because, right? And I bet a 1/5 zero would be a pentagon circulate if we could invent it.
Geographic.
How about a 1/6 zero? Does anyone know 3/2 AC-doocy? Well, so 3/2 AC-doocy, the very centers trade and the outside triangles circulate. So you do it 3 times and the triangle's back where it started, but the centers have gone a half the wrong way. So you have to do the whole mess again to get back. So it's like a little counter here and a little counter there. Anyhow, I'll leave the 1/12 zero, as they say, as an exercise for the reader.
You looked that
up. Technical zero. Oh, we've come to the meat of the talk.
Yay,
finally. A technical zero is a series of 1 or more calls that returns the dancers to the same footprints, but the entire square may be rotated with respect to the walls. That's always kind of true. And interchanges the heads and side dancers in a specific way, actually. That's kind of a vague statement, but we'll hit more precisely. When it's called from the appropriate F, you need to know the formation. A, you need to know the arrangement. S, you need to know the sequence. The phasor, the overall phasor, which really means the relationship, the R, will remain unchanged. And what that means, from my way of thinking about it, is if we have this sequence, head square through 4, and I want something a little less vacuum. Here's a good one. Heads lead right, swing through. What can we do?
Right and left grand.
Heads lead right, swing through, right and left grand. If I did heads lead right, 8 chain 2, swing through, could I do a right and left grand? Well, I'm not so good I can follow that in my head. But if 8 chain 2 were a technical zero, then I could leave it in or take it out, and that would work. Now, in fact, that particular one won't work, so that wasn't a great example to pull off the top of my head to stick one in. But that's what a technical zero is. We want a call we can stick in or leave out. And I'll give you a good example of one. How about if we have, here's a real one that's going to work. Couples circulate is a technical zero. If we do it from two-face lines, I don't care if they're right or left-handed, if the FA, the arrangement is normal or half sashayed, so now we're in right or left-hand two-face lines, normal or half sashayed, and if the sequence of the boys is the same as the sequence of the girls. So heads lead right, veer left. All my criteria are met. How do we resolve that? Just heads lead right, veer left. Give me a resolution. Hold on. Say it over here. Tag the line, girl, turn back, swing. Are people happy that that would be a legitimate resolve? Okay. Heads lead right, veer left. Couples circulate. My technical zero, which my claim is everything still work. Tag the line, girls turn back, swing. Does it still work? The promenade distance is different. That'll always be the case. But I could insert or leave out that technical zero. That's kind of what we're talking about with a technical zero. We have a couple of comments here. Butch is going to say something first.
Butch Adams again. I guess I have a question. When you say couple circulate is a technical zero, to me, like I know invert and rotate is a technical zero because it reverses the role of the men. The head men or the side men or the centers and the outsides. But when you do a couple circulate, you are not changing, to me, the position. The men are still in the end. The girls are still in the middle.
So let me talk to that. Okay. So these things are hard to think about, and they get confusing, and sometimes the simplest ones, like couple circulate, can be harder to think about than a more complicated one. And you mentioned invert and rotate, and we will say something about that, and if we don't, Tim will say about it when he also speaks, because it is a technical zero, and it's an important one. If I do heads, sometimes we think of active dancers, which isn't really a well-defined term, even in calling and resolving. But if I say head square through 4, especially when we're speaking and thinking in terms of chicken plucker, we think of the heads as the active dancers. They're the ones who did it in the middle and are kind of going, right? Right and left through, dive through, pass through. That's the heads going through the middle are active dancers. Right and left through, dive through, pass through. There go the active dancers again, Alaman left. If I say heads lead right, veer left, who are our active dancers at the moment? Are we thinking that they're heads? It's a little hard to know. But I will say this. We said that tag the line, girls turn around, swing promenade works. When I do the couple circulate, I said that technical zeros interchange the heads and sides. When I do that couple circulate, instead of having a head couple looking out, we now have a side couple looking out. And if the rest of the sequence were instead something like Ferris wheel, centers, do all this stuff in the middle, we would have flip-flopped. We would have changed who the heads are and who the sides are. So we'd interchange from the dancer's perspective who's active doing certain roles. So that's why the couple circulate is going to, it is a technical zero. It did interchange heads and sides. Okay so far? Or want me to keep talking and yeah, you can, okay.
One of the things you got to worry about that is also, what he just said there was the sequence states. Were they in or out of sequence in that example? Out of sequence. All right. And that couple circulate still kept them out of sequence. It didn't change the sequence state of it in any way.
I want to show you another technical zero. Let's look at all 8 circulate from ocean waves as being a technical zero, because that might seem a little weirder to people. And the all 8 circulate, we need the sequence of the boys to be opposite from the sequence of the girls. And we need ocean waves. So we want something simple. So if I do heads lead right, what's the sequence of the boys and the sequence of the girls? Are they the same as each other or opposite? They're opposite. So that's great. Step to a wave. Now we have waves and the sequences are not the same. So we've met our criteria. Now just give me a resolve from here. Swing through right and left grand. Instead, all 8 circulate. That's our technical zero. My claim would be swing through right and left grand still works. For the people who have been calling and know this stuff, is that it's true, right? It is going to work.
It will work.
I thought a lot about this talk, and was it possible to get 2 squares up here and have pennies or something and have numbers and have one do the technical zero and one not as a visual way to do it? And I didn't think I could come up with anything that was going to be so good and wouldn't kill a lot of time and would work. So unfortunately, we're kind of doing the mind games, but I'm trying to keep the sequences short where even if you don't already know this, like because you've called it a million times, you can kind of see it.
Take the same example of the all 8 circulate, but let's apply it to the module aspect of it, if I could, Clark. So if I say I'm in a zero box, and I step to a wave, and I have the boys trade. So we are, if you right there see, we're a recycle away to an Alaman left. Can everybody see that? All right. So I have somebody paired up. I have a secondary couple in my head. I know it's paired up out there. And I have my primary couple, the active heads who are out there, with their people. Okay? Mind you, it's the number one man with the opposite girl holding right hands. So I'm a recycle away to an Alaman left. I insert the all 8 circulate, which is a technical zero. And what's my get out? Still, it's a recycle right to the Alaman left. Now, if you don't like that style of get out, for singing call, it works good to swing your corner. But if you wish to have some change of flow, Clark's always said, well, you can add another technical zero, which might be a trade the wave of some form or something along that line. But the idea here is that if you know that, you can insert that technical zero, and you've done nothing. But the dancers have this feeling of motion and moving, and then you know I'm a boy's cross run to an Alaman left. And the girls have to open the door, and there's your Alaman left spot, and you're ready to go. So there's ways of working those all 8 circulates in kind of 2 fashions, if you will, for technical zeros. Now, definitely, they invert the heads and the sides. Can everybody see that? Okay. Please, Ron, come up with the mic.
Just a little gimmick I learned from Von Parrish years ago. He'd set up a situation like that. And he said, no, that square circulate once, and that would circulate twice, and that would circulate 3 times. And he'd wait for that all to finish, and then he'd do the same get out for everybody. Works pretty neat. The dancers get a kick out of it.
That's right.
I want to do another example with 8 chain 2. 8 chain 2 happens to be one of our technical zeros. And if we did a heads lead right, we could do some dancing past the ocean linear cycle. That was a true zero. It just moved them out and they came right back. And then it ends up if I do touch a quarter, walk and dodge, partner trade and roll, we're ready for right and left grand. If instead I have the heads lead right, I can put in an 8 chain 2. We do the 8 chain 2, then we can still touch a quarter, walk and dodge, partner trade and roll, right and left grand. So there was one from there. If I do heads fan the top, can someone give me a resolve?
Swing through, turn through.
Okay, someone said swing through, turn through. If I do heads pass or heads fan the top, ping pong circulate. Another technical zero. Swing through, turn through, should still work. So it's weird to think that ping pong circulate, that seems to do so much in our calling, in some ways is a technical zero. And ping pong circulate, just like all 8 circulate, needs to have the sequence of the boys different from the sequence of the girls.
But now callers, modularly, a lot of callers, and I hear this a lot, probably even cite callers, and they don't realize it. They always call it twice. Why?
If you do a technical zero twice, it ends up being a true zero. And we'll hit that in just a second when we see what happens when you do a technical zero from one of those places you aren't supposed to do it from. And in fact, that's a good lead into that. So let's do a real simple one. We do head square through 4. Our sequence of boys and the sequence of girls, are they the same or different?
Same.
They're the same. 8 chain 2. We said that was a technical zero. We have the right F, the right A, the wrong S, and we did our technical zero. Without doing the 8 chain 2, head square through 4, the resolve is Alaman left. If we do head square through 4, 8 chain 2, Alaman left, and promenade, the boys, they're still in sequence. What girl are they promenading? Few people said they're promenading their opposite. Now, don't feel like if you can't see that in your head, I'm not worried, okay? You could draw that one out. But it is the case they're promenading their opposite. And when I was preparing the talk, a claim I made is that if you use a technical zero from the correct F, the correct formation, the correct set of genders, the correct A, but you got the S wrong, and then you kept on going all the way to the end, it will always give you the Forelady chained effect. You'll always be promenading your opposite. Okay? So that means
the opposite of whatever you had.
Yeah.
He said the Forelady chain effect. So from a corner line, you wind right-hand lady line, or opposites to partners, partners to opposites. Okay.
Are you talking crams on me?
No, I'm not, actually.
Okay. So you see this from that perspective.
It's absolutely clear from the cram.
Excellent. Excellent. We have another comment here. Hi, Tom.
Tom Selner from Maryland. Many years ago, Jack Lazary says as he was in lines, if he did something that basically zeroed it out, you were either going to after you repeated it, you were either going to get your partner back when you get your opposite. So I think that's another example.
Yeah. And I mean, this is playing fast and loose, but back up.
We're all adults.
Your sight calling. You're going along, head square through 4, swing through, boys run, bend the line, load the boat, rotary spin, rotary circulate. Okay, now we're somewhere. Are the boys in sequence? I don't have a clue. I cannot track boys in sequence or out of sequence while I'm calling. I can barely call. I'm trying to keep the sexes right and make sure I don't do boys run when they're together. Do I know if the girls are in sequence? Even if I could follow the sequence of the boys, I couldn't follow the sequence of the girls and keep that together, right? So this is crazy talk to me. Maybe other calling methods can do it. I know Don's mental image probably knows some of that stuff, but I don't. So how do I know when I stick in a technical zero if I don't blah, 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 past the center step to a wave? Can I safely do a ping pong circulate or not? I don't know. Maybe you're doing a singing call figure and they're dancing really fast for a change, and you want to throw in an extra ping pong circulate just to slow them down. How do you know what's going to happen? Well, you don't, but you know that either it's going to do nothing to you and you're happy, or it's going to do a Forelady chain, and maybe you're looking for the corner and you got a right-hand lady progression. I don't know. It might not be so bad. Just saying. Michael's going to say something. Assuming you knew where, you have to have the genders in the right way. It has to be a number 0 quarter tag or a number 1/2 quarter tag. Okay. So now we've done what happens if you use a technical zero from the wrong place. And this little statement I made, I don't know if it's new or surprising to people, but not everyone knows and agrees with that until they think about it a lot. So, and that may be going further than some people want to go with technical zeros. I have another example. Say which? Oh, I've forgotten.
The Forelady chain effect.
Oh, the Forelady chain effect. Yeah. Does using a technical zero from the wrong place, does that always cause a Forelady's chain, or may cause a Forelady's chain? That's not something that everyone goes there and thinks about, but I believe it's true. And it also helps motivate, do the technical zero twice, it turns into a true zero.
That's right.
Right. Okay. Think about this one. Head square through 4. Swing through. Scoot back. What's the resolve from there? Recycle, and you got your corner. What if before the recycle we stick in a trade the wave? Then we can do recycle, and we still have an Alaman left. So we could stick the trade the wave in or leave the trade the wave out.
Up to you.
Is trade the wave some kind of zero? Do we actually want to get answers for that, or are you still happy working in your head? Ted Lizotte from somewhere in New Hampshire just had the comment that he's wondering why we're asking the questions when we're supposed to be giving the talk.
It's called interaction.
Yeah.
Keeping you awake.
Hold on.
Guy Steele, Lexington, Massachusetts. Trade the wave does not preserve formation. Therefore, I wouldn't call it a zero under your definition.
Bill Ackerman from Massachusetts. The way I'd characterize it is trade the wave being invariant under a recycle is a peculiarity of trade the wave and recycle. It has nothing to do with zeros. It just happens to be true.
Recycle is the animal, isn't it, Clark?
Recycle is what?
Is recycle the reason? Is it just?
It's like Bill said. It's a certain pair of calls. You can have a right-hand wave or a left-hand wave before recycle. And then you do the recycle, and it takes you into a non-handedness formation. And it just so happens that so if you think about the two states, here we have one on the left, that's the left-hand wave, and we could do recycle. And over here, think about the right-hand wave, we could do recycle. And either time, if we do recycle, we move into this new formation of facing couples. And trade the wave's the call that moves you from here to there, or back. And there's other calls that could be like that, but the most useful pair that I know is that before an ocean wave recycle, you can always call trade the wave and then still call recycle. Now, you might go, why would I want to move my dancers in from a right-hand wave where they're comfortable into a left-hand wave where they're going to fail and then do recycle? And the answer is, if you're headed for an Alaman left, in my humble opinion, I prefer to do Alaman lefts where my body flow is a little bit to the right, so the left hand is the one I want to get. So if I'm going along and I'm in right-hand ocean waves, and I'm about to call recycle Alaman left, I will call a trade the wave first, knowing it won't hurt anything, and then I'll call recycle Alaman left. And if they mess up a little bit, they're right near the corner anyhow. Something, but it's not any sort of true or technical or related to a zero.
Everybody agrees that to trade the waves is a zero. Okay.
Well, you have different people passing each other, because when you do the reverse recycle, or from the left, you have two boys staying in the same position and the girls are going over. If you do it the other way, you have two boys going over and the girls staying in the same place. So when you start it and you do a trade the wave, you have flipped them or taken them in or out of sequence, whichever way you were. But when you do the recycle, depending upon who's passing each other, you put them right back in again.
So I don't think I agree with what Butch said. I want 4 people up, 2 ladies, 2 men, make a right-hand wave.
Here we go. One more couple, please. One more couple.
This is easy. We aren't going to do relay the deucey. Okay, here's our 4 people. Here's our right-hand wave. And we're going to have Drew and Fran. They're going to end with their backs to you after the recycle. Remember where you are? Recycle. Okay. Undo.
Rewind.
Trade the wave. Recycle. we still have Drew and Fran with their backs. So the trade the wave didn't affect anything. I don't know what you're saying. Butch is going to do some calling.
And I'm just asking a question here. Okay, if I do a recycle from here, and I'm looking at Michael, he's crossing the center line of my wave. He's crossing over. Okay, now, a trade the wave. Now he's crossed over when he did the trade the wave. Now when he does a recycle, he does not cross over go. And he is on that side. So the only difference was who was the person who crossed over. If I do a trade the wave and a recycle, different people are crossing over on each one, but they still end up in the same position.
It's a zero effect. Would you agree?
Right.
Yes, it is. So it's what he's getting at is what Clark's getting at is the net result is a zero effect. All right, and that's true with trade the wave and recycle only. It might be some other calls that are similar that can create that, but in this case.
Butch says it only happens because of the way people are going across. And I don't need to micro analyze why it has the effect it has. My only point is before any ocean wave recycle, you can call trade the wave with impunity. And that's just a fact of the two calls, trade the wave and recycle.
No, it works.
I know it works almost as if it's a module or a zero or something like that.
It is a module.
Hold on. I need to get you on the mic. I'm not going to be one of those talks.
A site caller sees it because he sees that man on the end. He does the two move. He's moved that man, and he knows where and how that man moved. One time the man went over. The next time he didn't go over, he went around. But he's watching that in person. He knows where he put that in person. Anything he does to put that in person back is okay.
Yeah, I think you're overanalyzing it, Butch. I really do.
And I would say
let it go. It works.
I'm not a modular caller, I'm not a modular caller, but I do know that before a recycle, I can put a trade the wave in, and as a module, it's a nothing. Maybe think of it that way, right? We're going to have Michael Malton for it.
I think there are definitely other examples, and I think they're all about going from something that is handedness to something that doesn't. And an easy other example is if you start with a wave, and you think about explode the wave, or even just explode without the pull by. If you do a spread or advanced slide, you do the explode, you get to the same thing, whether you've spread or not spread. Spread if you want to. Explode the wave.
Or the spread is optional. Now explode.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So that's the same. It's the handedness going to something that doesn't have handedness that shares that.
Good.
So for the rest of the afternoon, of which we only have about 15 minutes, I want to do two things. I want to let Tim talk a bit about how he relates this to like the calling he does and maybe the calling you do.
I've interjected a lot of it while you were working, so we're okay. It's just the idea that you know that if you have the zeros and the equivalents and all that you can throw these technical zeros in, and again, it's just fodder. It doesn't matter. We just know that they work and that you've interchanged the heads and sides and you continue to call. For the dancers, all it really does is give them a different perspective. Sometimes it rotates the quadrants of the square. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it rotates it a lot. And so you just have to be aware of that. And you can throw them in on occasion on singing calls too. And you know that on occasion, if you want some spice or variety, that if you want to have a Forelady's chain effect that you can throw in a technical zero, you wind up with your right-hand lady progression as opposed to a corner progression. Pardon me, that's good to know as well. How about this as we throw out to you? A stir the bucket routine is really a technical zero because now I've interchanged heads and sides at the very end of it. So anything that you are utilizing that's going to rotate the square at the end, the net result, you've done a technical zero. setting it up and knowing where they're going to go is some of the game in disguising that. Where you throw in a technical zero effect that might be a weave by two, and you've stirred the bucket again to resolve. So just kind of be aware of that. Again, half a grand square, we said earlier, that was kind of a fun thing, because at the halfway point, if we just stopped there, did I not interchange what the heads and the sides are doing? On a side's face, they're facing, and the heads go into the center, and there's their grand square. Halfway through, it ends up just the opposite. Just the opposite effect. Okay? Yet we know at the very end, it's a true geographical zero if you call the whole thing. It's a true zero. Here's an interesting thing that I'll use, the invert and rotate stuff. Okay, we know that when we're calling along and you're using modules, we get to a point where I'm in a corner box or I'm in a zero box, the old box 1-4, but I'm in a zero box, a capital Z box, like the head square through. And at that point, I know that if I want to rotate the square around, well, I could do a few things to do that, but if I want to invert the active heads and sides, I can throw in the technical zero that modular callers use a lot. And that's anything that's equivalent to a star through, a pass through, a bend the line, and another star through. I could step to a wave and do an explode the wave and bend the line and pass the ocean. These are equivalents. But I've done this invert and rotate effect, which is a technical zero, interchanging who the heads and the sides are, and I've sort of rotated the quadrant of the square as we're working it.
I want to give an example there. So let's see if we can do this in our heads. We do head square through 4. The resolve is element left. We're going to do invert and rotate. Star through, pass through, bend the line, star through. In theory, nothing's gone wrong. We have different people active. The resolve is element left. And we do that all the time, and we talk about that all the time when we're talking chicken plucker and all that. Invert and rotate, we often don't speak of as a technical zero. We just think of it as a tool to invert the square and rotate the square. What if we do this? If we do heads lead right, I know the resolve is swing through right and left grand. It's heads lead right. Let's invert and rotate. Star through, pass through, bend the line, star through. Swing through right and left grand? No. It doesn't work. We have a Forelady's chain again because we did the invert and rotate technical zero in the wrong sequence state. Why do we often not even think about that? Because we so often get to where we want to do with the chicken plucker routine. It has a built-in simplifying assumption that how are you supposed to start chicken plucker? Head square through 4 or heads touch a quarter boy run or something that gets you to your corner ready for the Alaman left. The zero box sequence or the zero box phaser has built into it that the boy's sequence is equal to the girl's sequence, so we don't even have to think about that bit of complexity. That's why invert and rotate works.
Yep, and looking also in terms of chicken plucker again, we don't, much of us call the right and left through, dive through, pass through these days, do we? All right, we use some equivalent. Maybe it might be square through 3, trade by, or it might be right and left through, pass through, trade by, okay? But let's just take out the right and left through out. And if I started with a zero box and I said pass through, trade by, I've in my head I've created a across the street effect, and I have to call it again, pass through, trade by, which will give me to my resolve a zero effect, so I can call Alaman left. But at the same time, I flip-flop the square. Right, so it's not a geographical zero anymore, where chicken plucker is a right and a left through, pass through, trade by. That's half of it. Right and a left through, pass through, trade by actually puts me back to the geographical start. But if I don't say the right and a left through, if I say pass through, trade by, I flip-flop the square, and I have a true zero, not a geographical zero. Can everybody see that in their head? Okay? If I wanted the geographic effect, I'd have to call that 2 more times. Pass through, trade by, pass through, trade by. And if you're ever asked to do the hot hash, those are fun. Just call pass through, trade by, pass through, trade by, pass through, trade by, pass through, trade by. Geographical zero, Alamana left. And it seems like the dancers are running and going, wow, how do you keep up with all that? There's a nothing.
Okay, so I want to show you a couple of cool technical zeros that you don't normally see. All of ours have been 0.5 waves. It'd be cool to demonstrate these, but we need a square and I don't know. What do you think? You want a square? Time short. Let me just talk. We might get one. Okay, so first off, if you do advanced, you know how couple circulate was a technical zero if the sequence states are the same. Boy sequence equals girl sequence. Crossover circulate from a boy-girl two-faced lines where one's normal, one's sashayed. Because, the boys are kind of following their diagonal box around and the girls are following theirs. So that's why crossover circulate, in certain cases, you can just use it with impunity and it's fine. So that's cool. If you were dancing one of the C3 levels programs, or if you were at mainstream and had boy, boy, girl, girl waves, and you said boys in your box circulate, girls in your box circulate, we call that diagonal circulate, but, if you say in your same gender box circulate, that one is also a technical zero. And it's kind of like an all 8 circulate happening, but they're kind of crossing. And if you look on the sheet, that's where the big typo that you should change is. It's the last one in the middle of the page. It says ocean waves, numbers 3, number 4, same-sex diagonal boxes circulate. I believe that should say same. Oh, no, I don't trust you. Mine doesn't. I fixed it on the web. I didn't fix it here.
Mine says opposite.
Yeah. So under technical zeros, there's like the middle of the page. There's a whole bunch of them facing lines, two-faced. The very bottom one says ocean waves, number 3, number 4. It says opposite. I think it should say same. One that my computer program found that I thought was cool is from a tidal wave, a number 0 or a number half. Grand swing through twice is a technical zero. And now that's a little hard to see. You can just do it and diagram it and go, yeah, it must work. But, so what I do on those is I pull the dancers back a little bit or I push them forward a little bit. So as I go around the square, I can see what the sequence of the boys is and how they adjust and what the sequence of the girls is and how they adjust. Every technical zero has the effect of moving the 4 boys 1 position forward to the next boy if you do the technical zero, or backwards, whichever way you want to think of it. And the 4 girls in their little group of 4 moves them 1 forward or 1 backward. If we move the girls not at all and the boys 2 spots, and I'll give you an example of that. Let's say we had ocean waves, boys on the ends. We know all 8 circulates a technical zero. That has the boys move 1, the girls move 1. What if we just said instead, boys circulate twice? Is that a technical zero? It ends up no. And it doesn't flip-flop the square, so that's one big hint right off the bat. And you can diagram it out, and you can't leave it in or take it out. So it's not good enough to kind of shift the gears around so that, everyone got a different person. You need something else. Go ahead. We have a comment back here. No, I want to hear your lovely voice on the mic.
Because the heads and sides didn't switch with one another. The head positions, yeah. Right.
Okay.
Now,
go ahead.
There's other calls, too. We're talking about, like, spin chain the gears. Is that a technical zero?
Yep.
Sure is. It is a technical zero.
Because it's like an end circulate while the centers uncirculate.
Yep. And you can see that if you call it 4 times, it becomes a geographical zero too, or a fractional zero, 1/4. But the idea that you know that spin chain the gears is just a big nothing to you while you're calling it, you can continue on and know where to add it. Bend the line. What about bend the line?
From lines facing.
From facing lines, if you call bend the line, it becomes a technical zero. But from lines looking out, it does not. So you have to kind of be careful where you insert it and when you do that. Can everybody see that? From a zero line, capital Z line, if I bend the line from facing lines, we've interchanged heads and sides, or who are on the left end of that side line. They still refer to that as a little Z line, but it's still a zero line. Okay?
Okay, here's the final one. I'm looking for an application of Forelady's chain being a technical zero. You can I want a sequence where we can go blah, 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 Forelady's chain, blah, 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 and we resolve, or we can go blah, 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 and leave the Forelady's chain out, and it still works. Could that be possible? I do not see Bill's hand. Seems kind of impossible, doesn't it? And I'm kind of cheating just a little bit. Would you like to see the sequence? Okay. Let's say we did a head ladies chain. Because I'll tell you the Forelady's chain technical zero needs to have the sequence of the boys different from the sequence of the girls. And Forelady's chain is done from a squared set. So if we have the head ladies chain, we now have a squared set with the right sequence conditions I need. Give me the resolve for a head ladies chain to get to a corner. Heads lead left. Element left. Okay. Is everyone happy with that? Okay. So we're going to do a head ladies chain, Forelady's chain, sides lead left, element left. What did I talk quickly over? The fact that I changed the actives, but we said that every time we do a technical zero, we flip-flop the heads and sides. And what that means, and this was unsaid up to this point in the talk, this is for the people who stayed to the bitter end, we have a written sequence. It's going along, it goes great. Here we have the point where we could insert our technical zero, but we're not going to do it. And it goes, blah, blah, blah. Heads run right and left through, pass through, wheel and deal, element left. Let's say it used explicitly in the sequence, heads run. If we insert our technical zero, because we've flip-flopped heads and sides, every occurrence of heads for the rest of the sequence has to now be sides, and vice versa. And that's why, going back to the ladies' chain one, the sequence was head ladies' chain, and then we would call heads lead left, element left. Instead, we insert the technical zero for ladies' chain, and now I have to change heads to sides, sides lead left, element left. So I think that's the right note to end on, except I have some stuff to think about at the very end. And it was just a bunch of dumb, are all trees conifers and all conifers trees type thing. Every geographic zero is a true zero. That's true? That was a John Kaltenthaler statement.
Yeah.
He always told me that. I didn't understand it. A true zero is not necessarily a geographic zero. The geographic zero has to go to footprints. The true zero could be rotated on the lazy Susan. A technical zero repeated twice is a true zero. We talked about that. A true zero repeated 4 times is a geographic zero. I made that one up, and everyone keeps going, is that really true? But you think about the true zero, who knows whether it rotated the square 90, 180, 270, or 360. Do that 4 times, then, yeah. And then a technical zero used from the wrong place, wrong sequence state will accomplish a Forelady's chain action. Cool. And everyone understands all this. And some of you even knew it coming in here and didn't learn a thing, huh? I appreciate everyone coming. Thank you to Marriner.
And Mr. Clark Baker up front here, too, as well.